I'd like thank you for coming. Today our speaker is Tanja Schultz. Tanja is a faculty member in the computer science department in the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon University. She's a recent graduate of Karlsruhe University in Germany, and she's worked with Alex Weibuck as her advisor. Her talk today is on language independent and adaptive speech recognition.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, hello. I'm going to be talking about language independent and language adaptive speech recognition. And first I'd like to motivate why I think it's worth doing that. So first of all, it's for computerization. So you want to have speech-driven input devices. You want to have, you're going for smaller input devices, and then speech is really a good option to do that. And as soon as you're going for mobile environments or for internet, then you want to have speech-driven devices as well. And so it's really safe to say that speech technology may become one of the key technologies in the future. The second reason, so this is the speech part. The language independent part is the reason is the globalization. So there's a typical myth saying that so everybody is speaking English, so why bother? Why not just using English as a lingua franca? And unfortunately, so the recent accidents or attacks happening on the 11th of September showed that now people get aware of the fact that other communities and other cultures speaking different languages, and that we are not just can assume that everybody is speaking English and that we will be understood in the world. So that is, we need to attack other languages. And it's also well known that there are about 5,000 or 4 to 5,000 different languages in the world. And if you're watching how the number of languages increasing in the internet, that might be a good indicator that more and more cultures, more and more people getting involved in the internet and want to preserve their language in order to be able to read and write in their mother tongue. So that is, if you want to, for example, make people using a device, a speech-driven device, then you have to give the people the chance to use this device in their mother tongue. You can't just force them using devices in English or whatever language you think it's the best. So for that reason, for the computerization, which is speech technology, and for the globalization, which means many different languages, I think it's really worth addressing the problem of having speech recognition engines in many different languages. So there is a second myth saying a speech recognition engine in a new language, that's not really science. We're just taking new data and then we are done. I mean, there's nothing else. We're just doing all the approaches we have so far and apply it to another language. But I think that this is just not true, because other languages bring new unseen challenges. So you will find that each language has on a certain level some special characteristics which can't be just approached by using the common technologies. So there might be language-specific things you have to do, such as, so there are script problems, the writing system might be different. There are some languages writing from left to right, other languages writing from right to left. You do have languages where you have a script which is phonetic driven, or it has a strong relation between phonemes and graphics. And then there are other scripts like ideographic scripts where you have no relation at all to the meaning and to the pronunciation. Then there's the problem of vocabulary. So it's even not sure what a word is. So a word in English, for example, you can say this is delimited by 2 blanks. And then if you're going, for example, for vocabulary grow rate for English, then you will find out that it's pretty decent. So you can expect that you have a low out of vocabulary rate for English. But if you apply the same limit, so saying a limit between everything which is between 2 blanks is a word, then you may end up, for example, for Korean, for large words making up by constantly adding suffixes to the word, and you will have an OV rate of about 40% given a 64K vocabulary. So there are many challenges in different languages which just can't not approached by technologies we did so far for English. And then there's another problem with new languages. So for now, the community assumes that we do have lots of data available for building up language and speech technology systems. And the assumption always was I just go out and collect a lot of data in this new language, and then I do my technology and then I'm done. But this might not be true for several reasons. One reason is there are lots of languages where you just might be able to find enough speakers speaking that language. So that's the problem with what they call minority languages. Then there's the problem that you have languages which even don't have any writing system at all. So you won't, for example, be able to collect text data from the internet in order to build language models we have so far. So for good language models we're building today, we're using something like 10 to 100 million words, which you won't be able to find for, let's say, more than hundreds of languages. And the third thing is that it's very time-consuming and cost-consuming to collect these data and to transcribe them. So if you want to do speech recognition, you have to use transcribed speech, and this is really very expensive. So, for example, having read speech, you need up to 5 times real time in order to transcribe that. If you're doing that for conversational speech, the amount of time doing the transcription might rise until 20 times real time, something around these numbers. So it's very time and cost consuming. And then it wouldn't even be possible to collect a heap of languages and say, okay, I'm collecting all these languages and then we're working on them one after the other. Sometimes it's just not feasible to do that, for example, if you're aiming non-native speech. Because if you want to do non-native speech, then you can't really go for collecting English accented by a German, English accented by an Indian, English accented by a Chinese speaker. So it wouldn't be just feasible for combinatorical reasons to collect all these data. So for all these reasons, it's really what my work is focusing on is how can I come up with a technology to build acoustic models in a new language by borrowing data from languages I already have and using only very limited adaptation data from this new target language. So that's the idea of my work. So far, what we're assuming if we are coming up with a new speech recognition engine, as I said before, is that we do have speech data, and we're hoping that we have a large amount of speech data, something which is definitely larger than maybe 10 hours for a reasonable, well-performing speech recognition engine. And we're assuming that we know something about the sound system, and we're assuming that we know something about the pronunciation so that we can come up with a dictionary, a pronunciation dictionary, and we're also assuming that we do have enough text data in order to train the language model. Now, the idea of my work is that I'm still assuming that I have pronunciation rules given, that I have some knowledge about the sound system, and that I have text data in order to do the language model. What I'm trying to get rid of in my work is I'm trying to get rid of this large number of speech data, because this is what I think one of the most time-consuming efforts, collecting and transcribing those speech data. So the idea here is, so if I'm, for example, doing it in my talk, I will use the example of Brazilian Portuguese as my target language. So the old approach was, if you wanted to come up with a Portuguese speech recognition engine, collect a lot of data, do the transcription, have the pronunciation dictionary ready in the text data, and then train the new system. So what I want to do is, I want to replace this bunch of speech data by a small portion of speech data. I mean, ideally this small portion would be 0, and then having to compensate for the lack of speech data, then borrowing this from other existing databases. So the idea is that I'm actually borrowing the data of many different languages, not only one of them, but many different languages. So the idea in the work was first coming up with database and acoustic models in all kinds of different languages here. For example, German, French, American, Korean, and Chinese, for example. And assuming that I have this, then coming up with something which is a global database and a global acoustic model, or what I call language-independent acoustic model. So in order to do that, I have basically, the first step to do, I had come up with a uniform multilingual database. So when I started this work, there was really nothing out there, no database out there where you could really be sure that you do have a uniform recording conditions, a uniform task, a uniform domain. So there was nothing like that out there in more than 1 or 2 languages. So in the first step, so the approach was that I started doing this collection. So and what I did, that was part of the work I did in Karlsruhe University. I hired a lot of students coming from different countries and asked them to so I teach them in Germany how to collect data. I gave them the equipment and they went to their hometowns and asked relatives and friends in order to donate speech for my thesis. So that was actually the plan. And that worked out pretty well. So and you see here from the map that we really went all over the globus. So we collected French language in France, we collected German in Germany, Sweden in Swedish, Serbo-Croatian in Croatia, Russian in Belarus, Japanese in Japan, Korean in Korea, Chinese, we had actually 2 Chinese dialects, Wu and Mandarin dialect we collected in different sites. Then we collected some Tamil in India, we collected Turkish in Turkey, we collected Standard Arabic in Tunisia and Brazilian Portuguese in Brazil and Spanish in Costa Rica. So we actually had a lot of different languages and this database is still increasing, so now we added more languages and we are still planning on extending this database along the same line. So what we actually have now is we do have a multilingual database where we really have a uniform recording condition. Everything is recorded with a closed headset microphone. We have 16 kilohertz, 16-bit resolution, and so everything is clean speech, and everything is about the same domain. So what we did was we collected newspaper corpora from the internet. So we went to the internet and looked through international newspapers in this language and print them out and let people reading that. So it's a read speech database. However, when we corrected that, we added some noise words. For example, people did some hesitations, laughing, something kind of this. So the whole database is marked by that. And altogether, we're covering now 15 languages. We have more than 300 hours of spoken speech transcribed, and we have more than 1,400 native speakers. Well, yeah, and one of the reasons we went to these countries actually was that we really were aiming for speech which was not corrupted by living, for example, in the United States for several years. So we really wanted to have speech as native as possible. So that was one of the reasons why we not just went across in the US and collected speech from people living in the US. Okay, if you're looking to the top 50 languages of the world, which I derived from the Webster's, oh yeah.
So why did you choose this particular language set?
Okay, so there are several reasons. The first one was I wanted to cover the most widespread languages. So I wanted to cover languages which already draw a lot of attention in the speech community because it is for political, economic reason, whatever you can think of. I mean, some people say we want to have. A few years ago, I was talking to some guy at DARPA, and he said we want to have Arabic for the oil by the time it was oil, and we want to have Spanish for the drugs, and we want to have English because English is the most important one, and then we want to have Korean because Korean has a large potential in economics, and then we want to have Japanese because Japanese has a lot of potential in economics as well, and then we're going for Chinese because China is so huge and has so many people, so at least these should be covered. And then I was looking out for languages which are interesting in terms of language pairs covering in this database, so that maybe for later on you can draw some conclusions about language family relations. And then the third was just by chance. So there are people saying, hey, I'm going to India tomorrow, should I maybe collect some data for you? And I said, well, great, do Tamil. So some languages are happening like that.
So do you think, so the next question is, do you think that this language set covers most of the phonetic phenomena that you're looking to observe?
That's really hard. I mean, if I wanted to go for all of the phenomena, I definitely should have had a closer look to African languages, for example. I mean, I don't have any click sounds covered. I don't have any inhaling sounds covered. But I thought, first of all, I should cover those languages having really drawing a lot of attention, where it's really are of potential use. And then, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm finished with that. I'm still thinking that it should be extended to more languages, and African language are the first I would shoot for. So the answer is no. I don't think that I covered everything. Yeah, but yeah.
The interface for the recording, is it just a microphone type, or is it just through telephone type of channel?
Yeah, so what we did was we equipped the students with a Sennheiser microphone, was a headset 420, and with a DAT recorder, which is recording digital fashion. So you have a tape which lasts for 2 or 4 hours, depending on how good the quality is, and recorded this on 48 kilohertz actually. It's like a tape recorder. Right?
So
Or
you
it
said
looks like a
exactly
Walkman.
identical
Right.
device or setup.
So what I did was that I wrote down a really specific specification about where this recording should have happened, in a quiet room or office or something. And we have a data sheet from each collection telling us where it is collected, when it is collected, in what kind of environment, if other people are around, in what health condition the person is speaking, the age of the person, the gender and stuff. So the reason I choose for this very easy and light equipment was that people are really about carrying it abroad, and it shouldn't be robust, so it shouldn't be destroyed. It shouldn't look very suspicious, because people went to China and Russia and they had several problems with that. So, and this looks like a Walkman, so you can't tell the difference. So that was the reason. And we were thinking in the very beginning, we were thinking about a laptop, which would be easier, but it would be more expensive. And since I had sometimes 10 people working on data collection at the same time, then 10 laptops would just be too expensive for our. I mean, everything, all this money for this came out of Alex Weibel's pocket. So we choose the
Just
best
curious,
affordable.
how much was the budget to cover all these data collection?
Expensive.
Which is in the ballpark of?
It's hard to say, because so I would say the most expensive part was still checking the data afterwards and archiving them correctly, doing all this, putting them in a nice, neat fashion so that everybody can use them. That was really time consuming. That was basically done by students of our lab, and it's hard to trace down how many hours they really spent on that. But I would say this was the most expensive part. The other part, the travel expense, was pretty low, because the students were supposed to go to their home country, so they had all the travel, so only the flight was paid by us, and all the other expenses were paid by themselves, because it was for them, it was kind of vacation. So that was really cheap. And then the equipment was $400 for that recorder, and then 10 tapes comes up to 20, 30. So really, and then some kind of software in order to convert the stuff afterwards. So we used a microwave sound card in order to process the data from the DAT recorder. So the most expensive part was doing the post-processing then. Yeah, so looking at the top 50 languages which I derived from the Webster, I would say that we did a pretty good job in covering the most important languages so far. So what you see, the red bars are the ones which is the number of speakers in millions speaking this language as a mother tongue. The winner here is Chinese in terms of native language. However, Chinese, as you may know, is not a language itself. We really sum up here all the different dialects, so it might not be a really good number. So I would say it's still this language spoken the most in the world might be English. And if you compare the red bar in English with the yellow one, you see that there are much more out there using English as an official language, even if they're not really speaking it fluently, for example. So the languages that are not covered among the top 15 is Hindi, Bengali, Malay, Urdu, and Punjabi, and but all of the others. So at least 10. So at least 10 out of the 15 most important, most widespread languages are covered by this global phone database. Now, just so as soon as we did the data collection was done, then the purpose was coming up with acoustic models and with a speech recognition engine in that language. And just to give you an impression what that means, I want to focus here on language characteristics and on the differences in languages. So first, and maybe the most obvious difference in a language, if you look at it, is the writing system. So you see here, the first one is an Arabic script, the second one is a Cyrillic script, which is Bulgaria. Then there is a Roman script, Catalan. Then you see the Chinese script for Chinese language. Then you see Greek. Greek is this one. And then you see Hebrew. This is Hindi. This is Japanese, which is in this case close related to Chinese characters, but they are also using other writing scripts. This one is Korean. This one is Cyrillic, and this one is Thai script. So you see that there are many different writing systems, and so what we did in order to make it feasible for myself to come up with speech recognition engines in all these different languages is that we did the transcription in a Romanized fashion. So we tried to keep the writing system from the newspapers we collected from the internet, but then we are building mappers which enables us to map this script to the Romanized script, which actually in many languages means having a mapping from the script to a kind of a pronunciation, which was something we used anyhow in order to come up with dictionaries. So what I want to mention here is if we want to come up with a speech recognition engine in the first place, in a monolingual one, then what we need to have is dictionaries, and what we need to have is language models. And for most of these languages, there was nothing available. So we had to build this by ourselves as well. So we built basically several grapheme to phoneme scripts, or mapping from Korean script to pronunciation, mapping from Chinese script to pronunciation. So there's a lot of groundwork to do in the background in order to come up with all these different engines in the different languages. Then we had to deal with segmentation. So what I said before, it's just not clear sometimes what a word is or what a word phrase is. And I have here a pretty bad example of a Turkish word. So the whole phrase here is actually one word. The hyphens shows you where you can break them up, but it's actually one word. So in Turkish you can express a whole sentence in one word actually. And if you're modeling your language, Turkish language, using these word entries, you get unhappy because of the high vocabulary grammar. Then there are differences in prosody. So some of the languages are using tonal information in order to discriminate between meanings. Others don't. So Chinese, for example, they're using tonal information. They're using different numbers of tones for different dialects. So you have to take care of that, for example. Then there are differences in the sound system. So some languages like Turkish, for example, they have a pretty compact and small sound system, whereas others like German or even English, they have a more complex sound system, using more different sounds, and make it, for that reason, make it more upbeat on the phonetic level. And then you do have different phonotactics. What I mean here, you have different neighborhood relations between phones. So in some languages they allow clusters of consonants, whereas others don't, which is also a difference in languages.
So I must have, maybe I just misunderstood. Did you have a rote version like of the internet?
Yep.
So is this based on opinion?
Right.
So you just adopted what already exists?
Right, but you still have to write a pinyin converter. So
Opinion to syllables.
Chinese Hanzi characters to pinyin.
Oh, okay, right.
And how do you resolve the tone in the pinyin? Because if you just have the written version, is there enough information to actually...
Yeah, so if you have the context information from the characters, you can resolve the tonal information. And the pinyin actually is designed to show the tonal information by numbers.
Pinyin with the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right. So then the more interesting question is how to deal with that in the acoustic modeling. So yeah, okay, but yeah, so there is enough evidence in the Hanzi characters in order to find the tonal information. Yeah. And then we did for the Chinese, we have to do a pinyin conversion and the segmentation intro. into units. So that was done.
So were you able for all the languages to come up with a rich enough description using sort of Roman alphabet to cover all the sounds that were there?
What we did actually was we kept the ASCII format. So for some languages, we need to, for example, bring in a combination of letters, for example, to make sure that this is one sound.
So you invented something?
We invented something, right? Yeah, and so in most of the languages we have the original transcription and then we have the map transcription. So you can even do your own invention if you want to do that, taking the original one and then mapping it to something. But basically we invented something only using ASCII characters. Yeah, so after maybe 2 or 3 years, then I had all these monolingual speech recognition engines in place. So you can see from the blue bars giving you the word error rate of the systems ranging from 10 to 20%, and the yellow bars actually giving you the phoneme error rate for all these languages. And what you see here is starting from here. So starting from here, that's Japanese, German, English, Korean, Chinese, Turkish, French, Portuguese, Croatian, and Spanish. And what I want to say here is, I mean, for dictation, for rec speech, 10 to 20% word error rate is not that gorgeous. I mean, definitely there are systems out there making that much better. However, what the aim of these monolingual recognition engines was mainly first only using the global phone database. That is, I have per language not more than 15 to 20 hours of training data, which limits the performance a little bit. And then the second one was really that the purpose of my thesis wasn't not coming up with 10 language dependent recognition engines, but with really having kind of a baseline in order to do the multilingual acoustic modeling. So for that reason, I basically shoot for something like about 20% word error rate, and then I stopped pushing the technology in order to make that better. But I still believe that having somebody really speaking this language well, speaking it fluent or something, and knows about tweaking and tuning, he would or she would manage to get a better performance than this 10 to 20% word error rate.
Before you go on, for any typical system here, roughly how many hours of acoustic data do you have? What about the phone set for the dictionary, and finally what language model training data do you have?
Yeah.
Roughly.
So I have between 10 and 1 million words spoken text for Chinese, Japanese, Turkish, English, German, Korean, and French.
So Portuguese, Spanish, you don't have present.
Oh, Spanish, sorry, I forgot about
Spanish
that. Yeah, but not Portuguese. So
Not
Portuguese,
Portuguese.
I had something around 5 million or something.
Okay.
The phoneme system maybe the
And
next...
this is the same text that you collected over the internet?
Right.
In other words, it's very similar to the things they were reading.
Yeah, however, I take care of that I'm not...
Yeah.
Right.
And then secondly, are the vocabularies of all these systems, the sizes comparable? I know some languages are very different from the others.
Yeah, right, definitely not. So some languages that really have 30K vocabulary, others have 60K vocabulary, and the outer vocabulary rate is really not comparable across these languages.
So in other words, when I look at these side by side, it's not like they're comparable systems. They're
Right,
actually different.
yeah. So I don't want to say here that Japanese is easier than Spanish, for example. That's not a purpose of it. It's just give you a feeling what the baseline of the systems is. And that's actually really true. I mean, in some languages I put more effort, I have more resources, so the numbers doesn't reflect the easy or difficulty of the language. But maybe what is a good indicator for the difficulty of the language is the phoneme error rate. And if you plot the phoneme error rate versus the number of phonemes of the phoneme set, then you can see that there is a really strong correlation between number of phonemes and word error rate. And that, I think, it's pretty clear because the more compact a phone set is, the better you can discriminate. So some languages, because they have a small and compact phoneme set, are easier, at least on the phonetic level, And this is definitely true for example, for Japanese. Japanese, we modeled only with 33 phonemes, and it's pretty easy on the phoneme level. However, if you're going on the language level, that becomes much harder. The only outlier here is Turkish, where I found, analyzing the errors, I found that actually I had a high confusability between E, I, and Y, and I can't tell definitely why that is, but that was one of the outliers, but all the others are really nicely lining up along. Okay, so after finishing the first step, that is having the monolingual system with the monolingual acoustic models, I now approach the second step, and the second step is now how to come up with combining all these acoustic models and all these data in order to come up with a global phoneme set in a global database. So the idea here is that I want to share data across languages. And what I did here is basically that I took the assumption that the articulatory apparatus we're using as human beings is the same for everybody. And this is basically also the idea of what they call IPA, or the International Phonetic Alphabet. So there were really phoneticians and linguists sitting down and negotiating about a common scheme of how to arrange and how to classify sounds across languages. This is basically looks like this. Maybe you've seen that before. So they are arranging, for example, the consonants here along where the articulatory is actually happening and how it is happening. So you can classify all the sounds into this IPA scheme. So this is the one for consonants, and this is the one for vowels. And I actually used this scheme for building a universal phoneme set. So what I did was I looked up into books and learned from phoneticians what the phonetic phone scheme is for one language in terms of this IPA scheme, and then I overlay for all the languages these IPA schemes. And whenever one IPA sound is represented in two languages, then I trained one acoustic model using both languages in order to train this acoustic model of this IPA sound. So I basically built IPA classes. And doing that, I came from 485 language-specific sounds down to 160 and 2 IPA-based sounds. So you really can collapse the language-specific phone set into a third of it, so 30% size. And I found that, so on average each sound is shared by 3 languages, but definitely it's the case that there are 4 sounds at least which occur in all the languages I'm modeling. I've done that with 12 languages. So that's M, N, S, and L occur in all the languages. And then others like P, B, T, D, K, J, F, and then the basic vowels occur in most of the languages. So I have a pretty good overlap for these standard sounds. Now, then the question is, so after I established this IPA sound scheme, the question was how would I like to share the data across the language in order to train these sounds. And I came up basically with 3 different schemes. So one scheme, what I call multilingual separated, that is that I basically keep everything separate. So even if 2 or 4 languages share the same sound, I trained different Gaussians and I trained different mixture weights. So the meaning here in this picture is that this square box here, that should be a Gaussian codebook, and then the histogram on top of it should be the distribution weights for the mixtures of Gaussians. So in the separate one, I trained a codebook and a mixture of distributions for each sound for each language. In what I call ML mix, that's kind of the opposite. Here I'm really sharing everything. I'm sharing the Gaussians and I'm sharing the mixture distributions across all languages. So that means if I want to have an M, train an M, then I'm training the Gaussians and the mixture weights of this M using all the data from all the languages sharing this M. And then
equally weighted from all languages. How do you do the weight?
the weighting. So I try to control the number of frames per language coming into that. So I'm using 15 hours, 12 to 15 hours per language. So It might happen if the M is more frequent in English than in German, that you have more English things in it, like in German. That's right.
In principle, you could adjust the weights depending on what you're talking about.
That's true.
Based on language family.
Right, you could do that. Right, that's right. I haven't done that. And the third scheme is somewhere in the middle. What I shared here are the code books, because the Gaussians are parameter intensive, so I shared the data in order to train robust code books, but I kept the mixture weight separate in order to preserve the information about the language. So actually now I have an M coming from German, which is sharing the code book with the M coming from English, but the mixture weights of this German and English code phoneme are different. And if I'm doing that, then I did this here for 5 languages. These are preliminary systems, so they're a little bit worse than what I showed you before. If I'm doing this and I'm comparing the different schemes in terms of performance, then you see from the red bar, this is the scheme where I kept everything separate. If you're looking at the yellow bar, this is where everything's mixed between the languages. And you see that there's a really a severe degradation if you're comparing the separate and the mixed scheme. And you can see from the blue bar, this is the system where I kept the mixture weights language separate. This actually works much better. The dark blue bars gives you the system where I kept the same number of parameters for the code book. And the light blue one gives you something where I try to collapse or reduce the parameter size of the code books. And you see that there's still a gap, but it's much smaller than if I'm doing the mixing across all languages. So the message here is, I think, if you want to go for a multilingual system, if you're combining acoustic models of different languages, and you want to test or want to use this system with languages which are in the training, then it's really the best you can do is keep the models separate, because then you're not corrupting them by other languages. So if you, for example, want to build a bilingual system, English and German, and you want to use it either for English or for German, not for accented speech or something, then the best performance would be if you keep the models separate. At least it was one of my experiments. But if you want to, for example, use a bilingual system in order to reduce the size of the parameters, in order to reduce the footprint of the whole speech recognition engine, then it makes sense to combine these, and then I would actually shoot for preserving the language information in the mixture weights. So, but you're actually, at least with what I found, you're really losing performance if you mix acoustic models across languages. And I think this is pretty intuitive thinking of if you do the same thing for robust speech recognition and you do have a telephone recognition engine and you do have a closed speaking engine, if you really know the conditions beforehand, you would try to keep them separate and really specialize them on the different conditions. However, the really benefit would be if you don't know about the conditions and there might be the conditions somewhere in between.
None of those mixtures are pairwise, though they're all mixtures. None of those are pairwise mixtures between two languages. They're mixtures across all languages, right?
I haven't got it. Can you say it again, please?
You're saying we can conclude from this that it would be better to keep the models for two languages separate, since there's a degradation in performance. All of the mixtures up there are mixtures of language models across all your languages, though, right?
No, in the monolingual, I keep them separate.
Yeah, I guess no. Paul's question is, when you say, let's say for Croatian, the second bar that says 30% over there.
Yeah.
That's all languages mixed together. It's not just Croatian and Russian.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It's always all the languages.
All the languages, right.
In other words, if you had just Croatian and Russian, he's, I guess, conjecturing that perhaps just those two might, or Serbo-Croatian.
Right.
Those two might actually work better mixed up rather than individually.
That's true. Yeah. So I didn't take care about which one I'm mixing here. I'm just mixing all of them, right? Yeah.
But in the Croatian case, the mixture does also include Croatian, yes?
Right.
Have you done a test if you omit the language you're trying to model and use a mixture of other phoneme combinatorics without the language?
Not in this experiment. I'm coming to that later. So, but not here. So here was really the aim, looking at what I'm losing if I'm mixing stuff together. Yeah.
Were you surprised with this result? I mean, were you
No.
hoping to actually do better?
You know, okay, so historically, I must say this was done in 97 or something. And by that time, everybody was saying, hey, we have much more data and we will be improving the overall performance. And I had actually a hard fight with Alex, for example, because he was thinking along the same line. And I was thinking, no, I mean, it's just not intuitive because you're corrupting your speech with other language. And so the aim of this experiment was actually showing, I mean, not the aim, but so to me, it sounds really intuitive that it's losing performance. The very first papers coming out which showed improvement in the performance, I think that was the reason for they had a really severe data lag. So they had really suffering from only having few data for coming up with one model. So for that reason, they improved in some languages. But assuming that you do have enough data, I think it's pretty intuitive that it's not working out.
I just wanted to confirm that the red bar on the left-hand side, the mono language, is that the one with the mono language speech recognizer itself, or does that include all the mixtures of languages, cross languages, but separating the primers?
What I mean with the modeling,
that says mono.
I really trained Croatian A only with Croatian data and German A with the German data. And when I'm saying here mixing and keeping separate, I'm only talking about the acoustic modeling. I'm not talking about dictionaries or language models. So the language model and dictionary are always assumed to be separate. So that was not the aim here. Yeah, so actually, and this is the third step now, and here I think we come to the most interesting part is how can I use these acoustic models now in order to come up with a new language? So now the purpose here is that I want to use this global acoustic set and this global database in order to adapt to a new target language where I only have very limited data in this target language. So then the first question is, how do you do the mapping? So, and I did several different approaches. So the most obvious one is the IPA scheme mapping. That is, I looked at my target language, I looked through the phoneme set, which I assume to be known for this target language, and I picked out of my global phoneme set, I picked the closest match by hand. So this one. That worked pretty fine. However, if I did a data-driven approach, which I'm not showing here, but I compared it to a data-driven approach on a state level and also on a phoneme level, then the best approach was doing the mapping in a data-driven fashion on a state level. So that was what worked best for doing the mapping. And then as soon as I found the mapping, I copied the acoustic model, so I initialized the acoustic models with the global phoneme model. Now the problem is here, if you're doing LVCSR, that you're usually not modeling monophones, but you're modeling phonemes in the context of their neighbors. So triphones, or if they are from arbitrary contexts, we call them polyphones. And the question is here, whether the polyphones you already derived from other languages, whether they match the new language. And this is actually pretty obvious that this wouldn't be the case. In order to give you a feeling about the coverage you have for polyphones, I have here a figure giving you three curves. The red curve in the top giving you the monophone coverage, assuming that Portuguese is your target language. And if you're using Spanish, so what I did here is that I was looking for the language which covered the most monophones of Portuguese, which was out of my language set was what actually Spanish, which seems to be pretty, so that would be intuitive because Spanish and Portuguese are pretty close related. And then I took Spanish out of the set, and then I looked for the next language which complements the best my language set in terms of monophones. That was actually French, and that could be explained by that Portuguese is using nasal vowels which are not occurring in Spanish, but which are occurring very frequently in French. And then I took French out of the set, and then I looked for the next one complementing the best, and it was German. But you see that the gain is only small by adding languages, and that the whole curve here is saturating after adding three languages for the monophone coverage. Now the green curve gives you the same thing done, but not for monophones, but for triphones. And the first you realize is that the coverage really drops significantly. So this, if you're collecting the triphones in Portuguese and you try to cover these triphones by triphones you found from other languages, then the best you can get is a coverage of about 70 something%. And if you're going for quinphones, which is the blue curve, you see that you can actually cover up only up to 50% of the polyphones. So that means if you're looking if you're modeling Portuguese with quinphones you learn from other languages, then you won't get more than 50% of the quinphones from what you see in a test in Portuguese. And the second observation is that it looks like it becomes more important to have more languages if you're going for a higher neighborhood. So if you're going for monophones, then basically with 2 languages you can cover up most of the parts. If you're going for triphones, then there are up to 3 or 4 languages contributing to that. And if you're doing for quinphones, then there are already 5 languages contributing to the polyphone coverage.
Well, I mean, it seems like it might not be more languages, it just might be more training data. So instead of adding another nine languages, what if you just increase the amount of Spanish?
Well, I'm not saying that it's important to have exactly Spanish or exactly French or exactly German. What I'm saying is that it's important to have a variety of languages. It might be, I haven't tried it, or have I tried it? I think I tried to keep out Spanish, for example, which seemed to be the most important one, and I came up with the same, well, not the same, but almost the same coverage in polyphones. So it seems to me it's more important that you have a variety of languages than to have certain languages.
But even if, say, you took French and just... I think maybe it's not important, but it seems like if you have more languages, it's not just the variability between languages, but just the increase of data, which might be helping you with the quinphones.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't controlled that. Maybe I should do another experiment and control the number of triphones I'm looking at. That's right. I didn't do that.
The number of words of speech.
Well, okay, yeah, might be right.
Just as a point of reference, if I had, let's say, 15 or 20 hours of Portuguese in my training, and then I had, let's say, a 2-hour test set, I know that I probably won't encounter new monophones in the test set. I hope I won't. But let's assume that monophone coverage in the test set for Portuguese is 100%. What is the Portuguese coverage of the triphones? What is the Portuguese coverage? In other words, it appears that having 60% coverage is bad, but maybe it's no better with monolingual data.
Yeah, for Portuguese, it's something above 80%, 85 or something. I don't.
Triphones?
Yeah.
So you still encounter 15% new triphones.
Right.
Okay.
So, but this is highly dependent on the language, and I can't tell you from top of my head the numbers of all the other languages. But
because I only have a feel for English, I don't know about.
Yeah. So German is one of the worst one because you're really encountering a lot of new triphones. And I can't tell whether this saturates for a larger set. I mean, I only have this 20 hours, so it might be.
Is the triphone coverage measured by type of token?
In this case, it's measured by, this one is tokens, and I did the same thing for types as well. So in the paper I gave you, there might be both curves in it.
I'm sorry, I don't speak German. What exactly is the y-axis?
I'm sorry, that's the coverage, oh, it's German, I didn't realize. It's the coverage of Portuguese polyphones in percent.
But then it means that Spanish does worse than French.
This is cumulative.
It's accumulative, it's summing up. And it's kind of a greedy procedure, I mean, it might be really, so what I did is in all the cases I looked for the language which gave me the best coverage.
And you added it.
And then I I added it, and then I took it out of the set, and then I looked for the rest of the set. I looked for the one which complements the most. For that reason, the order here changes a little bit.
If I understand, you have to have the correct phone labelings for the entire printing corpus to do that, right?
I have to have what?
To be able to take it, to be able to take the languages successively in this 3D scheme, which augments your coverage to those polygons, you have to know which phone line you're creating.
Yeah.
Right. So would it be interesting to see what the average, say, just looking at the graph, taking 3 or 4 languages, seeing what the average benefit is, given that it sounds like in your situation, usually you don't have the phones labeled on the training corpus, right? So you can't think of the best languages to augment.
I'm not sure whether I got this question right. I mean, the aim here was just, the focus here is to show that you're still lacking polyphones in a new language. Did it answer your question?
But I just wanted to make one comment, which was that there's really a deeper problem, right? Which is that a polyphone in one language could be an entirely different allophone in another language, even though
Right.
they have the same. I mean, the context effects across language are entirely different. You can't capture that symbolic.
This is actually something which might be true. So the effects in the polyphones might be different depending on the language. However, for first discussion or for first approach, I really looked at the IPA polyphone, so to say, which I think is the closest match you can get.
But it says nothing about context effects. I mean, it's on monophones. So that's my point. I mean, I think that's probably the reason why it doesn't work to combine data from different languages. It's the context effects that are different.
Yeah, but I will show later that if you're massaging your decision tree and adding context from your new type of language, then it works out because
because it actually looks to see which acoustic contexts are similar.
Right.
Which you're allowed to separate. So
Yeah.
I'm not arguing.
No. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a good comment.
Does KR stand for Croatian?
KO is Korean and
No, KR.
KR is Croatian, yeah.
It's not very intuitive that Croatian would be so close to Portuguese because it's a Slavic language.
I agree, and I'm kind of puzzled by this as well. I can't explain that. So it. Yeah. So I was surprised by that as well. And actually, what was really hard, and I got this question earlier, is it's hard, for example, from language families or so to find an indicator which language performs better in order to bootstrap or initialize a new language. So I can't say that from my experiments I can draw the conclusion that languages which belongs to the same family works better in order to bootstrap another one. So that was actually not the case. Sometimes it was the overlap of the phoneme set, sometimes it was the size of the phoneme set, but I really can't say that, for example, using Spanish to bootstrap Portuguese is not better than using Japanese, which is kind of, might be related to what you just said. You have a question? Okay. Yeah, so in order to compensate for this lacking polyphones, I first want to talk briefly about the context decision tree we are using in order to model polyphones. So actually we're using a divisive clustering procedure, asking linguistic questions along a tree, and then you have bins of similar context models. And each of the bins is then modeled by one acoustic model. So drawing the conclusion from the former plot that there is a really lack of polyphones if you're going for a new language, and since you don't have many adaptation data in order to actually cover lots of polyphones, the idea here was that I'm training a multilingual decision tree by putting all my languages in it, by training all the information in that tree, by combining all the data in order to train that tree. And then I'm using only a limited adaptation set of the target language in order to adapt the tree to the new contexts. So what I did is, assuming that you do have a multilingual tree with bins never seen any Portuguese polyphones, and then you're taking this tree, you're taking a certain amount of adaptation data, and then you start regrowing this tree at those branches in the tree where actually a lot of polyphones in the new target language occurs. So I'm using the small amount of adaptation data in order to regrow my existing tree. And since I already have a decision tree which is pretty balanced across languages, the hope was that I can use this information to cover a lot of polyphones, but then use the regrow procedure to cover even more polyphones in the new target language. So from the experiments, what I did here is the blue bar here is if I'm using all my languages except for Portuguese, having a monophone system, so there is no tree, that's the blue color means there's no tree, and then applying the system to Portuguese data without any training or adaptation on Portuguese data. And that gives me something about 69% word error rate, so that's not really encouraging. The golden line on the other side is that I'm assuming that I have 16 and a half hours Portuguese data, and I'm using this in order to train a Portuguese decision tree. And then this is my golden line, so I can here come to 19%. This is the number I showed you earlier. If I'm using 15 minutes of adaptation data, that is 15 minutes of Portuguese speech, and I'm adapting the acoustic models of my monophone system, the blue one, then I'm getting a significant improvement by 57%. If I'm using the multilingual tree, so instead of having a monophone system, I'm using actually a quinphone system, I have a significant improvement, which tells me that even if the coverage of the polyphones for Portuguese is not really perfect, I still have a gain by doing that. So even if I haven't seen any, even if I haven't done any adaptation of the multilingual decision tree, I have a significant gain by doing that. Using 25 minutes of data, I can even get closer, so I have 40% compared to 49% by just using more data for my MLR adaptation. And having 25 minutes of spoken speech, you can already argue that it might make sense to train a decision tree only relying on Portuguese data, which is the yellow bar. So that shows you that if you're training on 25 minutes a new decision tree, then you get better than having the multilingual tree. So the coverage here is better. And then the idea of the polyphone decision tree specialization is now using the multilingual one, that is the one from the red bar, and regrow the tree, which is here the striped bar, and you see that I have a significant improvement from 32.8 to 28.9% by regrowing the decision tree, which I already had from the multilingual system. And if I'm using, instead of 25 minutes, I'm using 1.5 hour adaptation data, I can already come very close to my golden line. So that is, I'm managing here to come up with a system which has a really close performance to the golden line by only using 1.5 hour instead of using 16.5 hours. So to sum up this part, is I now have a multilingual database which is suitable for multilingual LVCSR, and I do have language-dependent recognition engines in 10 languages. I have language-independent acoustic model set which covers more than 10 languages, and I came up with multilingual acoustic models by data sharing. And I can do language-adaptive speech recognition using a limited amount of language-specific data, and using the PDTS approach, I can now create a system from scratch by using far less transcribed data than before. So that was basically the outcome of my thesis. So how long do we have? How much time do we have now?
Another 10 minutes for questions.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Direct question.
In the last graph, did you try to use more data than the 1.5 hour?
No. So you mean just to outperform the golden line?
What happens if you actually drop under only the Portuguese?
I haven't. This should be done right.
Using only 1 hour and a half of Portuguese, what was the performance?
Something about 25.
The BDD is key. Do you have a paper describing the BDD is key?
Yeah. Oh yeah, actually that is a good question. So I have here some selected publications. So unfortunately my thesis is written in German, so I really regret that. And the closest you can get is maybe the first paper, which is called Language Independent Language Adaptive Acoustic Modeling, which appeared in Speech Communication in August. Then there's another paper on multilinguality in speech and spoken language where it discussed some of the language-specific characteristics which came out in the proceedings of the IEEE. And then there's an ICAST paper from last year about the polyphone decision tree specialization. And you can access all these papers by going to my homepage and downloading the PS from there. So it might be the easiest thing. You can even access my thesis if you want to go into German.
So you said that you regrow the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Did you mean that you further grow the tree or actually collapse most of it?
I did both actually. I collapsed them and I regrow them, and the best by regrow I mean additionally grow, but which worked best.
Okay, thank you.